That's Simon. What I also do, just because I'm looking. I mean, we've just glanced over your profile, and from your first crack or your perceived first crack on your log, that profile's been followed so beautifully, man.
Yeah.
So are you finding that you've got a loss of body with milk? Is there a loss of intensity, a loss of body?
Yeah, I'd say a loss of intensity.
Yeah, okay.
Probably more so with body.
Okay.
I did notice just watching it as it ran, the temperature seemed to vary a lot less than some of my other profiles I've tried, where it's sort of oscillated quite a bit. This one didn't seem to as much.
Yeah. Look, I mean, it's looking pretty decent, and it's looking pretty cool. You've got around your first crack, you've got a pretty sharp decrease, a pretty sharp drop around your first crack, and there's a kind of this drop and flick, you know, which could be a problem. That could be that slight little bit of intensity that you're losing through milk.
Yeah.
Because that's typically what that drop and flick would do to your coffee. Effectively, we'll stall the roast, we'll try and overcompensate and shoot up, and that'll effectively just drop and flatten out a bit of that intensity. You're saying, well, Simon, the beginning part of your curve. So if we look at your ROR, I mean, it's got this beautiful kind of turn at the bottom and this beautiful steady, which looks like it could be a steady decrease. You know, hey, what would you say, Chris? There?
Yeah, that would be a steady decrease.
It's a steady decrease, Simon. What I'm concerned about, just looking at it, is your temperature profile is running beautifully above the curve. But when I look at your power curve, it's looking slightly like it goes through a bit of a dip. And that, and now I'm not tasting it, but I would say that could also cause a little bit of flattening from a flavor perspective. But in saying that, I'm not tasting it. I would say if you're losing a bit of body, it's probably because of that flick at the end through first crack. Because it looks like it's a substantial dip, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if I was to move that boost, is that what you call a boost? If I was to move that earlier, because it looks like I sort of missed it there.
Let's just have a look at your boost, man. Let's just have a look at what you've done.
So it was
750.
okay, so it's not. I don't think this here the zone 2 thing. It's probably not. I may not have done it correctly.
Let's have a look at it. Let's just analyze it. So you're at 750.
We'll look on the log.
Yeah.
750. It's very close. It really needs to be kicking in.
Yeah.
Right back here, doesn't it?
Yeah, 705. Somewhere around that 70. Even Chris has got on. I mean, you're looking at the shared screen now. Even around that kind of 654, I would kick that boost in from there. You know.
Of course, another way of doing it. See, look at that point there. Hi, Shaz.
Hello, Shaz.
At that point there, the line, we've got a nice steady power line, right? And then it dips.
Yeah.
Now, if we could take that dip out with a power profile, and we power profiled it all the way through to there, just straight line power,
we wouldn't have that flick.
Then would that get rid of the crash flick?
I think it would.
Would moderate it anyway.
It would moderate it. What it would do is it would make it look kind of like my profile there, where it's a lot less depressed.
Yeah.
You know? Or it's more depressed. So there's two things we could do, Simon. So the one is like Chris says, is add a power curve into it. At probably what time would that be, Chris? Probably around about 7:10.
Well, the way the power profile works, it picks up on the amount of power that's being delivered.
Yeah.
And then holds steady from that.
Yes.
With a programmed increase, decrease, or even zero flat. And so what I'm thinking is coming through here, everything's very much under control. And if we picked up that power level there at 627, which is 980 watts, and we
brought it to there, yeah.
Brought it through to all the way through to there at 1016 watts. So we just made a straight line from there to there. We're of course assuming that we will be pretty much in the right spot when we come back under control at that point.
Yeah.
But it may be that simply putting in a boost zone through here
just earlier, yes,
works better. Like, it's an unknown at this stage.
Yeah. So Simon, I would try that if I was you. I would try that boost zone a lot earlier.
Yep.
I would try that boost zone around about your kind of your 650, 648, 650, 655 mark. I would start the boost there. And if you look at it, I would end my boost somewhere around probably the 820. Hey, Chris?
Out that far?
Yeah, or maybe 815, somewhere around there.
So you'd be boosting from 650.
Yeah.
Which is actually the moment that it starts to crash. It
starts to crash, yeah.
And it technically ends.
Well, it ends at that.
Crash at 742, and the flick's in place. So you could actually just hook it off that at
652.
650 through to 740.
Yep. That makes sense. Absolutely. So Chris, I would try that if I was you on the next roast and see if you lose that dip. Now,
so just be changing those two numbers there.
Yes. Yeah. So just change your zone 2 times start and end to what we're recommending, and then also that should. In theory, that should give you a little bit more body and intensity in the cup. Because the profile looks good, man. It looks awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And so, how does the power profile work? How would I apply that?
I'm just trying to think what state I've got the documentation. It's a very new feature, Simon. So. There is a worked example on the, but I can run you through it very quickly now. If we've got time, and that's what we're here for. The idea of a power profile is we would make note of what the power was looking like when we wanted to go into it, which I reckon you'd go back to about, well, let's say, I kind of need a bit of paper to write this down. I could write it down on the screen, but we just need to be able to make some sort of record that at 617, we need to be quite precise about this. At 617, the power level was 977 watts. And then over here at 921, the power level was 1017 watts. So 921, 1017. So essentially what that tells me is that I want to go to 1017 from 977. So I'm just bringing up the calculator. So since we're sharing a screen, I will share the calculator. Right. So my mouse is playing up on this machine. I don't know what's going on. Okay, calculator. The 1017, which is the power that we know we want to be at when we finish the zone, divided by 977, which is the power at the start of the zone, is 104094. Now, I don't need to do anything more. I can immediately see that's 4.094%.
Yes.
So that is an increase of 4.094%.
Yep.
So these are the pieces of information that I've scribbled down, and I will now when my mouse cooperates, I will now share that. So that's what I've noted down. At 617, we had 977 watts. 921, we had 1017 watts, and that is plus 4.094%. So now I'll come back to work on your profile. Go back to sharing. Okay. I need to extract your profile so that I'll keep your logged information for now. So I've got a match of that in the profile. And I can now go to profile settings, and I need to be able to see my numbers as well. 617, 921. So this zone is, we'll use zone 3. And we'll start at 617 and we'll finish at 921.
Just close it, Chris.
It's a Zoom window. I think if I close it.
Oh, okay.
921, 921. And the boost is it 4.0?
4.090.
0.9.
090, am I correct? Sorry.
Four 4.094.
094, yeah.
So that's done.
Boost.
However, we haven't converted it to a power profile zone yet. It's still a standard zone, and that will just be an ordinary boost. The next little trick, the conversion trick, we go to engineer mode and we go to zone 3. And these multipliers, we zero them. And that takes it out of being a PID control zone and into being a power profile control zone. So there's no PID control during these times. There is only a steady 4.094% increase from beginning of zone to end of zone. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah. So it's a wee bit tricksy to set up, but it's not too bad, really.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one way of doing it, and the other way of doing it is changing the times on your boost.
On your boost.
Yeah. So the difference here with the boost is my classic way of explaining what is a boost. I get you to imagine that you are steering a jet boat across the river, and the point that you aim for is not the point you're going to reach because there's a current moving down the river. So you have to turn a little bit upstream to hit that point. And so a boost, because the PID control system of the KAFFELOGIC is rate of rise based and not temperature based in its final analysis, what the boost is doing is it's saying just turn a little bit upstream. Now, if there was no current, what it would do is it would send you on a curve and you'd miss the mark altogether. But what the boost does is if there was a current, then the boost compensates for the current perfectly and gets you exactly where you want to go. So at the time when the beams are going into first crack and they are crashing, that's like a heat current sucking heat out of the beams. And so you put a boost back in by saying to the control system, well, whatever error you get, I want you to add a little bit more to it so that you're actually steering above the line. But then obviously you have to make sure that zone ends before chaos is set in, or the controller will lose control, and you'll get a fairly big oscillation coming. It won't completely lose control, but you just get oscillation.
But you'll get that oscillation coming through.
So you use it judiciously, and that's why when we were looking at what are the times you would use to set around that, we looked at the log. I'll just go back to the log. Looked at the log. Log over here, and we set up I was using 20-second smoothing on my rate of rise line, and that enabled me to pick out the crash from all the other noise that's going on, and therefore I picked start and end of my zone really based off that rate of rise.
Correct. Yep, 100%. Yep. Does that all make sense, Simon?
Sorry, I just had a mute because my computer's deciding to be a hairdryer, so hopefully that's not too much background noise. Yeah, that's great. Thanks. That's really good explanation there.
Yeah, absolutely. So getting rid of that kind of dump in after your first crack. So it's two things. You're either using your tee up of your profile, so your energy coming into your being through endothermic and then exothermic, you're using that as a boost, as almost a natural boost, or you're adding a boost into that time. But if you add the boost, if you make the boost too long, effectively, all the work that you're trying to do, you will effectively take all of that work away, because the profile is just going, well, now I'm going to, I've overcorrected the boat and there now is no problem. And what you're telling the profile essentially is you're telling it that there's always a negative, there's always an error, there's always an error. So there is no error, but you're telling it there is an error. So it's always going to try and correct. And that's where you see those oscillations over or past first crack. So that's why the time in which you use that zone is critical, not to overshoot it, but also not to undershoot it, because then you're not going to get the desired effect that you want to get. Yeah.
But Wayne, can I ask you now about, I guess, what I would see as being option 3? Like, we've taken 2 approaches here.
Yep.
We can attack it with a power profile.
Yep.
And we can attack it with a boost.
Yep.
But if we took the third option, that we want to try and avoid zones if we can, could we attack it by reshaping the profile?
Yes, you could.
And what would you do there?
Okay. So if I was to reshape the profile, Simon, on this, what I would do essentially, if you look at your profile, it sits at that plane that is, it's a very soft, and look at I want you to look at your ROR line, Simon. There's a huge decrease, and then there's a complete flattening off of your ROR line. Okay. Now, if we were to reshape your profile, what we would essentially do is, we could do 2 things. I would start with your ROR line, and I would start from the start, that huge decrease that you're using to get to where Chris is pointing there to about the 3-minute size, 3-minute kind of time. I would have that coming down at a further angle. So I would have that not being as direct as it is, as linear as it is. I'd have that kind of coming down at more of an angle. Okay. What that will do with the rest of your profile is it will essentially, instead of flattening out your curve, you would almost have to manipulate your curve like almost a C like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. And what that will do, Chris, essentially, Simon, what it'll do essentially is, what you're doing at the bottom of that ROR curve when you're flattening it out is, you're still applying heat to the curve, but you're not applying enough heat at the start of the curve, if that makes sense. So you're thinking to yourself, I'm going all the way up, which means that my ROR is dropping, effectively it's dropping correct, but it's bottoming out at the end. Okay, so still a decreasing ROR. The problem is that you're losing too much heat. through your Maillard phase into your, from exothermic, endothermic to exothermic. Okay, so if you effectively had to reshape that profile by bringing it up slightly, which would then shorten your time, you would then get a lot more heat generation through your endothermic to exothermic. That's what I would say.
So how would you reshape that? I'm actually having trouble with the mouse on.
Okay, no problem.
On this one here.
So how would I reshape that?
So actually, if you zoom in,
yeah.
you can share your screen.
Could I share my screen?
Yeah,
okay, well, let me
that
zoom
would be
in.
easy, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And then we just need to make sure one of us is muted.
Yes. Sorry about this, guys. Give us 2 seconds to do that, Simon.
Okay, sure.
I'm trying to show you what I want to do. So I've got a profile open at the moment that Chris and I have been tasting or working on, and I'm going to change that profile. Or you know what I'm going to do, Simon? I'll probably bring up your profile and just change it on there if you're okay with that.
Okay, yeah, that's fine, thanks.
So I'm clicking into Zoom now. Okay, so there I am now.
Yeah.
No problem. Okay, good. So I'm going to
have to silence my speaker as well.
There we go. 100%. Okay, so you can hear me, Simon?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so I'm bringing up my volume. I'm going into KAFFELOGIC quick just to pull your profile. So just give me 2 seconds with that. I'm just going into the forum. Page. Sorry, I just want to load your exact one. And it was in the questions and discussions. I'm taking it.
Yeah, it was in the same thread as you posted your original profiles.
There we go. Okay, I've got it. Here we go, Simon. So I'm loading that up. Let me just move close to Chris so we can see.
You share your screen.
There we go. Just want to bring that up. So there we go. So I'm loading that. Okay, so let me share my screen. I'm going to ask you for share. It says host disabled, attendee screen sharing.
Host didn't actually. Zoom keeps bloody Zoom changing things on the background. Allow share screen.
There we go. Right, so there we go, Simon. You can see it.
Yep.
Okay, groovy. Right, so I'm going to kind of make that. I'm going to open that up, and there's your profile. Okay, so if we look at it, that there is beautiful. Okay, and we can see how so let's do this quick. Sorry, Simon, let's just clear all comparisons. So I've got 2 profiles running. So there's a couple of things I look at. So I look at this line, which is your power line. I'll look at that flick up, and I'll look at your temperature line sitting under the curve at the start. Okay, so it's matching around this kind of point over here.
Mm-hmm.
I almost look at it matching around this point over here. Okay, so how do we change that, essentially? Export to profile. There we go. So if I had to look at that, let's just check 1 or 2 things here. There we go. Right. So there are. We're just sorting some stuff out. We're trying.
We're in a Zoom conference about Simon and Shaz.
No, it's all okay, John. John, come in here.
It's a virtual cafe.
Say hi. Hi, guys. It's not your runner.
So Simon, okay. as you look at me pulling it, you can obviously see what I'm doing. So, if I would go back to your profile, so there's your profile. So this line here, I'm trying to almost get this line to follow on there. So if I take that point, for example, and it's just a rough kind of manipulation, and I show you kind of there. Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, there's a couple of things I can do here. I can either do that, pull that point like that, okay, which will essentially allow my temperature profile to shoot over and then come around, follow my point, and meet up there. Okay.
All right. Don't forget that the peak power 105,
yes,
that red line is pretty much going to do what it does.
Yes, absolutely.
Regardless.
Absolutely.
For that first half a minute.
Absolutely. But then what I do is I'll then start to play around with these points here. Okay. Now this is quite raw, forgive me. If I add another point in, you see how my recommended time starts to shift? If I add another point
in, you definitely want to point up closer to your recommended time.
Yep, that's what I'm doing.
Control.
That's what I'm doing. Yeah. Right now with this point, if I can, there we go. There we go.
And are those sharp transitions in the rate of rise, are they a problem?
Yeah, they're a super problem. I would never have that sharp. I'd never have that kind of sharp rate of rise, but I would smooth those out, Simon. What I think, sorry, I've just pushed too many buttons here. I apologize. So what I'm trying to demonstrate, Simon, is how I could almost still drop that rate of rise, but I could tee my coffee up to put a lot more energy into this phase here. Okay, now how I do that essentially is to bring that profile, and you can see how I'm moving your ROR line slightly higher up. So what I'm looking for is I'm looking for it to follow this trajectory and not essentially a steady trajectory at the bottom. So I'm constantly looking for my ROR to drop. And what that's going to do from the profile is what I've seen with profiling is it's going to allow this temperature, this mean temp, to increase to here, which is teeing it up. The profile will then, after 30 seconds, Chris, 40 seconds of preheat.
Well, stage one preheat will be limited to 20 seconds.
20 seconds, that's correct. 20 seconds will then start to pull me back to here.
Yes.
Okay. And what it does here, Simon, I've got this energy, this intense energy that falls into my mallard phase. So it starts to fall into my browning phase. Now, essentially what you want here is as it joins, it will join, it will sit slightly above. So this is exaggeration, slightly above, even slightly below, and it should correct itself to being on the profile. Okay. What that will do, Simon, is it'll effectively drag and draw the heat through that now endothermic phase through to exothermic phase. So you'll end up having this type of effect where your mean temperature is slightly above the line going into first crack, if that makes sense. Now, what I'm going to do is, if I just stop this for 2 seconds, is I'm going to bring up a profile for you to show you that type of curve. Now, I would obviously flatten that out. I'd flatten those curves out, and I'd try and get that beautiful rate of rise. Now, this is a 911, or sorry, a ready-to-drink curve that we tried yesterday. And this was the log from yesterday. So you can see how mine differs to yours. Yours shoots up there and then plateaus almost there, where mine's shooting up lower in the beginning. And you can see how my mean temperature is essentially following it on the outside. And then the profile system is saying, you better join now, my friend. And it
the
pushes.
screen's not shared, Wayne.
Yes, sorry, Shaz. You're right. My apologies again. Sorry, I'm getting too ahead of myself. Sorry, Shaz. Sorry for that.
No worries.
So this, Simon, this is what I'm trying to effectively do. You can see that now. This is what I'm trying to do with your profile. So that line, your profile line does this. Okay. My profile line effectively will go shorter and then have more of a steady peak towards first crack. You can compare file, work on my downloads. Okay, does that make sense?
Yep.
Sorry, I'm just trying to manipulate something here. So what you should see now is me bringing up your profile. Your log. There's your log. So you see your log? There's my log. Here we go. So at this point here, what you can see is our mean temperatures are your mean temperature, my mean temperature. I mean, mine's slightly off yours. But what I'm doing here is with me bringing my profile down here, I'm allowing my temperature to start to reach or start to come back to that profile. So what I'm doing is I'm essentially teeing up this line. You can see how my line's at a more steady gradient, increased gradient than yours is, versus a flat gradient here. So I'm ever increasing in heat. You're flattening out your heat curve, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Now that's going to lead me into a first crack there. Now if we look at it, that doesn't really have that dip or as an aggressive dip as you see on yours. And that's just because I'm teeing up my profile. You know, you can see my first crack there, which effectively, if we had to call that a dip and a flick, well, that would be my dip there. My dip wouldn't be as aggressive. It's kind of flattened out like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, in that, I mean, you can see from this, I'm not using any form of zones on that either. Sorry, I've got a zone 1. I've got a zone 1 in that. And my zone 1 is effectively working. Yeah. That's where my zone 1's working. You know, just to push that line slightly above. And that for me is, I mean, that's for me the trajectory that I would want to go. My power line effectively is moving nice on a nice increased curve. It's got a dip here, but we can look at why it's dipping there, why it's got that dip in it here. We say I could have missed first crack, but I definitely didn't miss first crack with it. So that could just be the beans giving off a little bit, or it could just be an anomaly in how the beans are reacting. But effectively, me teeing up my curve here allows me to have greater endothermic and then exothermic through to my first crack. Yeah, I'm not using a profile. I'm not using a boost profile on my first crack at all. I'm using the energy that I have on this lift to give me that in, if that makes sense. Whereas on yours, the profile's gorgeous. I mean, look at your mean temperature. It's running beautifully above, but you end up having this almost, your first crack has this divot in it. And me, I would say, bring your profile slightly down. So bring the bum end of your profile slightly down, giving you a little bit more tee up into it. Or alternatively, that would be first choice. Second choice would be to use that boost in this area, like we discussed, where you could just boost it slightly and try and get away from that flick. So those would be the two options. But that's how I would look at changing the profile to give me a little bit more intensity in the cup through milk, especially for you through milk, and with your higher profile that you tend to roast at some, or you prefer roasting at, you know. We find that loss of intensity or that loss of body in a medium, slightly light to medium coffee, we can still tolerate. But in your profile, how you like to drink your coffee on the higher end, you know, it really is magnified. You know, that loss is really magnified, and we don't want that result, you know. So we're trying to say, let me do as much as I can to give you as much energy into first crack so that I can push it to a higher profile and I can still enjoy it as a higher profile, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Okay. Cool.
Cool.
I hope that makes sense, Simon.
Yeah,
I try and
that's great.
display it as much as possible. Yeah.
Well,
No, it's given me some good next steps for that profile to tweak it.
Yeah, look, the key behind it is that profile probably tastes really good with your coffee, but you are finding that you're losing that body. Why are you losing that body? It's that Peruvian coffee that you kind of always roast and drink, which is nice because you've got that constant frame of reference to go from, you know? Now it's just about seeing, should I add in a boost or should I manipulate the profile? Whichever one's easiest for you and makes more sense to you, you know? The outcome is the same. The perceived outcome should be the same.
Should be the same.
Yeah.
Interesting to experiment.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Cool.
Now we should check in with Shaz before we run out of time.
Yes.
But no, thank you for sharing that log, Simon. That was great.
Thanks for looking at this.
You've got the profile view and the...
Look at that, eh? It's fantastic, eh? Chris on 2 cameras, eh? So I think we should check in with Shaz. Shaz, how have you been with that?
Okay, so just this morning, just before we started, I had a look. Okay, so I'm behind everybody else. I'm starting to have a look now. So I did pull up the 3 and I was just selecting, okay, which one would I go through, which would I use? And then I first I thought, okay, I'll go with the faster heat. And then, I don't know, after a while, I decided I'd go with number 3, which was slower heat at the beginning. But then I did pull up some of the other curves that I've tried, like the Now curve and the Ninja Turtle and things, and then tried to decide which way I would follow. One of the questions, those 2 yellow points on either side, what are they? Like that directs the amount of power, or?
No, it's purely a graphical thing, in the sense it's a line drawing control, and they control the smoothness of the line at that point. The roaster will follow the line, or try to follow the line, but if you manipulate that to give it a bend, then it'll try and follow the bend. And if you use the smooth tool, you'll get automatically calculate smoothness. But sometimes when you're trying to get kinks out of your rate of rise line, you need to make hand adjustments to those yellow points. Often you don't. The smooth tool will do it perfectly good. Good job. But I mean,
Okay.
when you drag that a long way just so we can see.
This?
Yeah, drag it right down.
Right down?
Yep.
So you see where I am, Shaz? See the screen?
Yeah.
So I'm on that yellow point.
Yeah.
Now if I drag that down.
So you can make a complete mess of the line. And then if you click the auto smooth, it will make a smooth line. But you see, that's not as good as you had by hand.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep.
And that's essentially Shaz. So from my side, you would see that yellow dot is very different to that yellow dot and that yellow dot. I mean, just the distance from the blue dot, if that makes sense. And that's the almost hand-drawn, the hand adjustment that you make. You can go in and out with that, and you can go down and up with that, you know. In and out, effectively, if you look at the profile, in and out would move the kink in your profile further out or further in, where up and down would move the kink in your profile further up or further down, if that makes sense.
Okay, and then you use the smooth tool, and it will smooth all the bumps out.
Well,
so does that mean if the yellow spots are further apart, then it would be smoother, or?
Will it be smoother if the yellow dots are further apart? if the yellow dots are really close, then essentially we're saying we want a tighter curve. And if they're further apart, we want a less tight curve.
A less tight curve, one more of a curve, yeah.
So that in a way there's an optimum distance for them to be relative to where the next blue spot is, because you want just the right amount of curve to get you through there. But what the software doesn't really do is analyze the whole curve spot, all the spots, and come up with the perfect yellow. So it's it comes up with a rough guess of where the yellow spot should be to give the smoothest curve. And then sometimes you find you need to stretch the curve out or tighten the curve in by pulling the yellow dot away or towards the point.
What I also find, Shaz, is I don't particularly like overlapping yellow points, if that makes sense.
Yes, because what will happen from the maths of it all is the one curve won't have finished until the next curve begins, and there'll tend to be a kink.
Yes, so there'll be that. There'll almost be like a kink, if that makes sense, if you overlap your curves. Yeah, so there's that fine adjustment, Shaz, of bringing the points together, but far enough so that we have this beautiful shape, if that makes sense.
That's quite I mean, and some people would say, I don't bother, just draw the blue spots where you want them, and then hit smooth the whole curve automatically, and then forget about any further kinks.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go, Shaz, if you go to draw, you can go smooth all, which effectively will smooth everything for you, if that makes sense. And you don't have to do individual points. But if I find that, and you can see my yellow point there, and you can see my yellow point there, and you can see what it's doing here to that curve. It's just smoothing it up beautifully.
So we're about to wrap up, but we can continue this tomorrow if
happy to. Are you happy with the answer, Shaz? Happy the answer we've given you?
Sure, because I haven't really got that far into it. So no, I was just a little bit confused with that, and I tried twisting it, and it all went haywire.
So
I won't touch it. I think I'll just
no. You must touch it, Shaz, but it's going to take you a bit of time to kind of get your flow behind it. That's kind of the essence behind it. Is it will take you. That's where the individualism of the curve comes out, or the profile comes out. Yeah.
But the smooth curve tool is a good starting point. And whether you need to go beyond that or not,
that's your preference.
It's an open question still.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool.
Okay.
Happy days. Simon, happy with that? Shaz, happy with that?
Yep.
Yep, quite happy, thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Look, we are going to